In this video, we're going to cover using the Wire EDM machining job inside of BobCAD. So when the software first loads up, you'll have your job type. You can choose milling, turning, Wire EDM, or nesting. So we're going to go ahead and pick Wire EDM. And then you have a list of machines that you can choose from. So you're just going to pick whatever machine you do have. In this case, I'm just going to use the Sodic Mark 21. And then from here, we can go ahead and hit Stock Wizard or go ahead and click OK. So we're going to start just by clicking OK. And you'll see that the Wire EDM job is going to load into our CAM tree. Now, what we can do next is right-click on CAM defaults and then go to the current settings. And what we want to do is just go pick our machine. So I'm going to pick that Sodic Mark 21. And then you'll see all the information pop up for it. So we have our cutting conditions database. So it's going to pull up to that Sodic Mark 21 cutting condition base. And if we uncheck this use cutting conditions, it's just not going to use them. You'll have to input everything manually. But you can change that on the fly, so it's best to use your cutting conditions, and then if you need to change something later, you can do that inside the feature. And then in here we also have our parameters, how many work offsets do we have, our maximum arc radius, and whether we're submerged machining or not. So that's on the machine parameters page. Under machine definition, you should never have to go here for your wire. These are all set up. So you can just ignore this page. Go to our EDM setup. This is where we're going to pick our maximum taper angle, our maximum taper with the land, our upper guide location, how high it sits above, and really these are just the defaults that are going to open up for you. And then over here we have use auto threading. If you have an output start hole program, if you have a post for that, which you can get created, you can set that up to output your start hole program as well. And then you can select this checkbox to begin all cuts at a start hole. So every cut's going to go back to that start hole. And then under EDM posting, we have our post processor that we're going to choose, and you can change those. Most of these should be in here already for you. And then you have your hole post. So if you do have a post that allows you to use a hole post like this Sodic, you can go ahead and pick that. And then our NC file path. For the most part, you can leave this where it's at and everything's going to post just fine for you. And then down here we have our NC file extension. So whether it's .nc, .txt, whatever it may be for your machine, you can choose that. Now if your post output isn't always G-Code, you have command or ISO code as well. You can change in between the two here. Post processor should be selected, correctly for each one. Down here we have our output options. So this is going to be the program number and then our sequence numbers, so whatever line number we want and whatever increment we want. Over here we have subprogram numbers. So we have output subprograms. So to turn subprograms on, you're just going to put a check mark in that box and you should be fine from there. Change your start numbers and increments. Down here we have output cutting conditions, output automatic comments, output cuts to separate files, output file breaks, and then output guide position. So these are all going to be things that affect your code. So you got to be careful which ones get picked and which ones you don't want to. So that's the default. And then if we go to the current settings, the part current settings, you'll see we have the same page. It's going to pull up all the same information. We go to EDM Setup. Now we can change the wire diameter in here, and this is one of two places where we're going to be able to change it. So here's our wire diameter. That's what's added to this EDM Setup page, and then the posting page is the same as before. So then we have our machine right here. If we want to change the machine, you just right-click, hit Edit, and then pick whatever machine you want now. If you want to just change the post processor, you hit Edit, hit Select, and then pick whichever one. Now these are all linked together, so when I pick a Sodic Mark 21, it's going to pick the Mark 21 post. If I want to pick a Mark 21 machine with a Mark 25 post for whatever reason, I'd just go in and change my post to a Mark 25. So next we have the EDM stock, so this is going to allow us to run the stock wizard. We can change the color of the stock, the transparency, or blank it out. So I'm going to go ahead and run the stock wizard while we're here. In the stock wizard, we have rectangular stock that we can choose, cylindrical. You can pick wireframe and actually get the wireframe stock, or we can pick the solid model if we have one, or an STL file if you have one. So we're going to just go with rectangular, hit next, and I'm just going to let BobCAD figure out what size I'm going to need. So I say enter, and it looks like it's 5.9791, and then it's 4 inches tall. Now if I wanted to add any extra offsets onto this, I just say an X minus. I want to add a 1/4 inch, and you'll see over here it just extends out. And let's say 1/4 inch inside of the positive, and you'll see it just jump out. Now I don't need any extra stock on this, so I'm just going to zero those back out, and then I can go ahead and hit next. Now this is where we're going to pick our origin. So wherever our origin is going to be set, and I'll pick mine right in the middle there. that's going to be where we have our 0 for our machine. So then we can go ahead and just hit OK. The next thing below that is your materials. So if we hit edit, you have your material list with all the different materials that we have. So let's say we want to pick carbide 1, and then right down here we have our wire diameter. Now for the height of stock that I have and the material I'm choosing, you'll see I only have a 0.008 and a 0.01 for my wire diameter. So if you see I go change this back to aluminum and then I click on the wire diameter, you'll see a lot more options here to choose from. So you can just go through it that way, pick the wire, and that's going to change it in here as well as inside that part current settings that we were in before. Those are the two places to change your wire diameter. You don't change that as you go through. You're just going to pick the wire diameter, and that's what you're going to go with. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And then we have our machine setup. When we right click on machine setup, we get the option to edit our stock. Hit OK, and let me blank out this stock real fast. Or we can add a 2-axis inside, 2-axis outside, do a 2-axis open part, and then we go into 4-axis inside, 4-axis outside, and then a 4-axis open part. With this we can compute all our toolpath. So this is going to compute everything that's in the machine setup page. We have a load feature, so if you've previously saved a feature, you can reload it. Below that we have paste feature, which is grayed out right now because I haven't copied any features. But if we have a feature that we like and we want to use it again, you can just right click on that feature, say copy, and then now we could go and paste this feature. Below that we have delete all the features, so everything that we would have under here, any tool paths, it's going to delete everything. Post all yes no, this is going to turn everything off for G-Code posting and inside of simulation. So if you click post all yes no, it's going to turn off everything. We have a blank unblank toolpath, so if you want to see one or you don't, it's going to do all of them under the machine setup, and then you can go in and unblank whichever ones you want to see. We can collapse all items and then expand all items, or we can rename the machine setup. So let's go through doing a quick 2-axis inside, and then on the same part we're going to do a 4-axis outside. So we're going to right click, say 2-axis inside. I'm going to select my geometry, and for my geometry I'm just going to go ahead and pick this bottom circle here. We want to base everything off the bottom, so you always want to think when you're doing a taper or anything, you want to start with the bottom of the part and you want to taper up towards it. So I want to go ahead and hit OK, go next. In this one we have our upper guide location, lower guide, and then our glue stop. So if we were using a glue stop, we'd say use a glue stop, and we could have leads or no leads. In my case I'm going to go ahead and say turn off glue stop. If this was tapered at all, I could say add a taper or add a Landon taper. So I can do those two options. In this case it's just a straight wall that goes through it, and I'll say none and then go next. For this template we have strategies. So we have strategy 1, strategy 2, and strategy 3. Now you'll see there's no difference between strategy 2 and strategy 3. With strategy 1 we have our rough cut and our skim cut. Now I can add more skim cuts in if I want to, or we can add more to the skim cut pass itself later. One thing to remember though, if you do use a glue stop, so if we say use glue stop and then we go back to that same page, we now have something to add in a tab cut. So if you go into strategy 2 or strategy 3, you'll see that strategy 3 now has a tab cut added to it. It's not just a rough cut like it was before. In this case I'm still not using a glue stop, so we're going to turn that off. I'm going to use strategy number 1 where we rough and then skim cut, and then we'll go next. Wire diameter is already picked. We have enable starting cutting condition, so this is pulling from the cutting conditions database, which you can't modify, it's in there already. Or you can click this and make any changes that you want. Change your feed rate and do everything like that. Change our rapid feed rate if we'd like, and then go next. Our posting is the tolerance for our arc and spline output. Our work offset, if we're using G54, G55, you're going to go through here and find all those. And then our posting order, we can go by individual shape or complete the entire operation. We'll go next. Our sorting, if we're cutting multiple pockets or multiple profiles, you can sort how it's going to cut those in what direction. Go next. Our parameters, how are we cutting this part? We can either do a standard profile where we're going to cut it out and drop a slug if there is material on the inside, or we can do a coreless cutout and go in and spiral our way around, kind of work our way out, say a pocket out routine on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn on my system compensation and turn off the machine. That's going to be your G41, G42, but I want to leave it on system compensation just so we can see the toolpath actually output inside the program. So then we'll go next. Corner types, however your corners are going, you have sharp, round, loop radius, loop length, triangle, and then bisect line. I'm just going to leave them on sharp, shouldn't change too much for us. Our start hole, so this is going to be the hole that we have drilled in the center, whatever size it may be. I'm going to just say an 0625, and that's going to be my start hole. Our lead in and lead out, I already have a point that's placed on here, but in the lead in category, we have a type of lead in set as a circular lead in, a perpendicular blended line, a perpendicular line, a parallel line. Select point allows us to select our points, and then point blend allows us to pick the point but blend it into the part. I'm just going to go ahead and pick select point, and then I can actually go in and say pick point. So if you have an outer part and you want to pick your point wherever, my point's actually right on XYZ 0, so I'm going to pick that and then right click and hit OK. But if your point was anywhere off of that, you'd pick it and then just hit OK, and then the numbers are going to show up in here for where that point's located. So I'm going to say apply to all operations down at the bottom. That way all this information here copies over to this leads page, and I don't have to make any changes when I get here. The last page is our cutting conditions for the rough pass. So you'll see when we say link to database, this is just pulling the cutting conditions from the database. The things you will have to set every time are going to be your speed and your tension. And when I get to the skim, I'll go a little bit more in depth with what this stuff all does. So we'll go next. Our parameters, we can do either a standard profile, we can do reverse skims, or we can skim in the same direction. So let's say we're doing 3 skim passes total. And this is why I didn't add it all to the same machining strategy page, add 3 skim passes, because I have the option to do it right here. So I'm going to go 3 passes. I'm going to turn my system comp on and my machine comp off, and then I can go next. External corners, internal corners, once again. Our leads page, which matches our first leads page. And then right here we have the same cutting conditions page. Now you'll see this link to database is checked, so it's going to pull all this offset, power setting, and feed rate from your database. Now if I go click on this, we can go and make changes to these. We have our skim pass 1, 2, and 3. But let's say we wanted to change our rough pass at the same time. I wanted to set these all up at the same time. Right now I can only see this operation. I can't see the first one. If I click on edit table, I'm going to see our rough cut and then our 3 passes, our 3 skim cuts. Now if I change anything in one of these 3 fields, the power setting, the offset, or the feed rate, it's going to automatically uncheck that link to database, and I'll be manually running this from now on for this job. So I could go in and say my power setting, we'll say is 1 there. We'll say, just 1, 1, and 1. And then hit OK. You'll see it automatically unchecks it, and from now on, anytime I look at my passes, I'm going to have a different power setting that's not linked back up to the database. But the nice thing with the edit table, it allows you to edit all of them. So you can go through and do all your tool paths and then come in and edit the information that needs to be edited, change your speed and your tension without having to go through each feature, going to this page and making those simple changes. When we can do it all in one window, it makes it a lot easier for us. You can also add comments to each pass. So if you want to comment anything, you can right there. And then we can go ahead and just hit OK. And now when we go and say, let me turn the link back on to database, I don't want to leave my power settings on 1, I can just go ahead and compute. And you'll see there's our tool path. There's the top, it's just barely offset in. And then the bottom here, just barely offset in as well. So that's our first pass. Now let's go through and do our 4-axis outside. So we're going to right click on machine setup, go to 4-axis outside. With this one, we're going to pick our upper profile, which is here, and then our lower profile, which is going to be the bottom, and then our sync lines. Now I'll show you an example of the sync lines in a second. I got one down on the bottom there. We're going to go next. With this, we have our stock thickness, our upper and lower guides, glue stops, which I'm going to turn off for now, and then our sync options over here. Now we have 3 sync options. The first being by entity. Now by entity is going to work. Now by entity is ideal for features in which the upper profile and the lower profile contain equal number of entities. So if I have 8 on the top, 8 lines and arcs on the top, and then 8 lines and arcs on the bottom, by entity is going to be the best way to go. By proportion is ideal for when you don't have equal number of entities in the upper and lower. So you can go by proportion. And then by closest is ideal when you want the upper profile and lower profile to sync to the closest start or end point of the opposite profile. So it's going to sync as close as it can. to all the closest places. In my case, I'm going to say by entity because I should have the same amount of entities on each one. Go next. We could choose our strategies again, and remember, if you turn on a glue stop, you'll get a tab cut to show up as well. In this one, I'm just going to do a rough and a skim. Go next. Our wire diameter, if we want to change any options in the starting cutting conditions or the feed rate, we can just check those boxes and make the changes. Go next. Tolerance outputs again. Parameters, I'm going to go ahead and turn my system comp on and my machine comp off. We're just doing a standard profile. Our start hole for this one, I'm going to just say it's, it doesn't really matter. We could start wherever with this one. We should be fine with this. Now for my start point, I'm going to go ahead and leave it on perpendicular, and we're going to make the length, let's go ahead and just make it a 1/4 inch outside the part that it's going to start. And then I'll say apply to all operations, and then go next. Link to database, if we go to edit table, we're going to see our rough and our skim pass. And if we go to the skim tab right here, we can add more skim passes in if we want. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my system comp on, my machine comp off, go next. Our leads again, which should match the page before because I used apply to all operations to copy it from this leads to this leads page. And then our cutting conditions once again. If we need to make any changes there, you will have to set up your speed and your tension. And then I can go ahead and compute. And there's my part, so we're leading in here, and then we're just going to go and cut our way around all the way. So let's go check this out in simulation real fast. Now I'm going to go ahead and just hit play, and you'll see that we're going to simulate right around there. So there's our skim pass, skim pass, skim pass, and then here's our outside cut that we're going to go through. And then as soon as it gets down here to this blue edge, to this blue line, we're going to see the skim pass. So we're going to go through and do our skim pass now. And there we go. So to get rid of anything, because I can't see what my part actually looks like right now, what you want to do is have the measure tab open, and then you can go to, if you click this drop down, this is how you can actually lay down points to measure. It's not very accurate, but you can use it to do distances and everything. What I'm going to do is say remove chips, and then you have a select chips, keep only one part, or auto, and it'll define the targets. I'm going to leave it on select chips. And the way that you select this is by clicking in your middle mouse wheel. So when you click on whatever part you want to get rid of, in this case I want to remove chips and I want to get rid of this outer block, I want to make sure I don't pick this middle one. So I'm going to click on the outer block and it should get rid of that. And then I want to click on this inner block here and it should get rid of that. And then there we have our finished part. So we can rotate it around, take a look at everything. And it looks pretty good, pretty clean. So there is our 2-axis inside and our 4-axis outside. Now one thing to go through is the sync lines. With sync lines, when we go through the 4th axis outside, you can see where the sync lines would be is where the geometry is based. You know, here's a sync line here, here's one here, but you can actually draw those in manually. And you'll see if I go ahead and blank out this toolpath and I turn on my sync lines, there's all my sync lines that I selected. And to select the sync lines, I just say reselect. I put this into a front view and just drag a window across all of them and then right click and hit OK. Very important when doing your 4-axis outside, if you click on your upper geometry, you're going to see what the geometry is, but you'll also see a start point. You want to make sure that your start point starts in the same location. If our lower geometry start point is over here and then we go ahead and hit OK and then go and recompute this toolpath, you'll see our start point is actually going from here over to there. So let's go ahead and unblank this, and you'll see it's just twisting everything around. And if we were to go try and run this in simulation, it'll run, it's just not going to look right in any way. Walls are going to be cut the wrong way. You know, here's our lead in point still. So it's all messed up. So you just got to be careful. So you want to make sure that your lower start point goes all the way over here and matches your upper start point. So you hit OK. And then you just go ahead and compute your toolpath again. And let me turn off my sync lines, my upper and my lower, and we can actually see the whole part. All the green is the toolpath that's actually going to run. So getting back to this one here, which we have the same geometry with using sync lines and without. If you want to post your G-code, you just right click on Wire EDM job and then say post. Wait for it to post through. And there is our code. So we can go send this out to the machine, make sure it's saved as the correct NC file extension, bring it out to the machine and run the part. And that concludes the video on the Wire EDM job.